Mm, it's been a while since I've done any reading. I'm gonna do my best. I'm still kind of ill. Or like the coughing. So thank you for those who have come to my channel. Thank you for just being here. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna read for someone in particular here. They know who it is. You know why I'm doing this. What I'm gonna do is well, it might just reveal who they are. um, let's see. So this one's particularly about medical chart, or what in astrology or medical astrology called a planetary health chart. Um, so what I'm seeing here is, oh, sorry, is this one here? Um, is let's see here. So they've got several things transiting. Um, so this is of literally January 6th, 2026. Um, they've been having the one that's big here is Jupiter retrograde transiting their 10th house, and it's basically transiting 10th house to conjunct uh, natal moon. Um, Typically, on a physical level, it's not that it can be considered something tied to the digestion. Um, but because this is not in the traditional, the typical houses it is in medical astrology, the first, the 12, the sixth, and the eighth houses, it's doesn't have a huge bearing. Let's see here, 20 degrees. Let's see if there's other ones actually here. If anything, hmm, I would say the south node is the biggest one. Seeing here, the south node is in 10 degrees Virgo. This is where I consult um, my little book here. Okay. Considering degrees Saturn here. 26. It's already kind of marked into the seventh house here, since that usually signifies um, potential, like old things coming through in relationships. But we're talking in medical astrology here, so it's kind of, I don't know if the 5 degree rule applies. Don't worry about it. It means that when we have 5 degrees, when we have a planetary body, at least 5 degrees from the cusp of a specific house, it already affects that house. Um, but it still ties in with the sixth house. So there must have been something happening in the past year, where there was like anything concerning limitations, specifically like within the feet, slow metabolism, slow circulation, the feet itself. Because Saturn is a big one. Usually represents limitations, lowered metabolism. Uh, yeah, here you go. It limits circulations, restricts, undernourishes, paves the way for toxic buildup and stiffness. Yeah, it's typical Saturn. Uh, it rules typically structures and bones. So anything that's calcified, anything that's forms, that's usually Saturn rules matter. Um, oh, okay. Represents the dark blue light color, a neurologically strengthening color that shouldn't be used too long in the body. Okay. Uh, you're born at night, while Saturn is simultaneously positioned under the horizon. Okay, that doesn't apply here. Okay. You okay. No, no. So Saturn cools the body. Okay. 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 There. We have Saturn conjunct your South Node retrograde. So typically that means that there's hereditary conditions that were picked up from past lives or heredity, ancestry, have to do with um, low circulation of the, what is this one here? It says here, stuttering restriction to lungs, arm or hand, asthmatic, asthma, the cold variety, pulmonary consumption, bronchitis, arthritic arms, shoulders, hands, frozen shoulder, cystic fibrosis, emphysema, pneumonia. So it does technically reflect into your sixth house. So that means, hold on, let me see here. I feel like there's something tied to the past where it was a lot of limitations to restrictions. But here we have retrograde of Saturn. So I feel like it's something that was constant. But there were restrictions or things that needed to be restructured in past lives. And therefore you carried on to this life where your health is affected by it too, in terms of like, I would say typically the circulatory system, um, but also the What's that one here? Immune system. Yeah. Sympathetic nervous system is also part of this one. Right? But yeah, the nervous system, sympathetic nervous system, probably the sciatic nerve. Um, let's see here. I feel like that one's more about the sciatic nerve is triggered more when there's no movement in the home. So we have here the nodes to lunar nodes in opposing signs of Sagittarius and Gemini. The Saturn one in the past shows a big one. There's something about a restriction of new information coming through. When I say new information, I mean um, it's almost like how do I understand this one? Because when we're talking about the nodes, at least medically speaking, the south node is the one that's passive, the one that probably if you get in a person or a native get a specific condition picked up in this life, um, that the south node represents kind of just like it'll happen to you. So for example, like if it's something that will happen to you passively, if anything. So a lot of it is tied to the Gemini um, representation in the body. So here it's what did I say it again? Hands, arms, not elbows, fingers, the trachea, bronchial tube, lower esophagus, upper lobes of the lungs, scapula, clavicle, pleura, um, voluntary nerves, speech, and hearing. Um, but this is not a big one for your in terms of like a health of this life. Um, one thing I see that's big is Mars here. So Mars is in your eighth house. Actually, there's two big ones. Um, if you have innately speaking, in meaning your birth chart, you have Pluto retrograde in your first house, and usually that's the whole body. But Pluto often represents very toxic, possibly things that have to do with full transformative healing. Um, a lot of it is through the kidneys. It's showing me that it's because it's in Libra. It's tied to kidneys. It's tied to the metabolic system, the suprarenal and the adrenal glands. So in terms of stress, that's not good, especially with career here. This is where Pluto here squares Saturn. Um, especially square actually retrograde. If it's already square Saturn, square retrograde, yeah. So that's a huge one. So that means that there have been stuff that are challenging in this life that helps that kind of in a way becomes yeah like challenges or blocks when it comes to your circulatory system, specifically like your general central nervous system and how that's connected to the sciatic nerve and then down the legs. So that means that there needs some sort of like excess release, and that's why movement is important in this life, because otherwise it gets kind of just stuck. Um, and there's a lot of like I don't know what this is. Again, yeah, there's the pulmonary stuff, so it's a lot to do with with the lungs. Um, says here, cystic fibrosis, emphysema, pneumonia. So basically, if it's not the blood is not circulating specifically through the nervous system, it might cause some blocks. the Pluto there is saying that it needs to be detoxed, specifically through the not only the kidneys, I believe the bladders are also included in this one here. Glandular balances, yeah. Okay. But specifically, yeah, lumbar region of the back, yeah, okay. So acid and alkaline balance is important. The hormonal balances, um, filtration of urine, distillation, ovaries, okay, veins, those kind of stuff. So anything that's to do with um, the lower regions, like closer to kidney area. Yeah, that's what I'm getting. Yeah, so there has to be that movement. Otherwise, there's going to be some sort of buildup. Okay, and with it being in retrograde, especially as a natal thing, what I mean by that is that because it's sort of like a lifelong thing, it's part of your lifelong. Instead of just like, if I were to look at what's called like transits, then it would just show me, and show you the actual picture right now. Let's see. All right. So right here we have, yeah. Okay, so where did I see that? Yeah, right here. So Saturn, okay, and with Pluto there in the first house. That's a big one. With the Mars here in Taurus, inflammation of ears, nose, and throat area. Typically this area right here up to the neck area as well. Uh, Mars there increases inflammation. It's kind of the opposite of Saturn, which is which is high metabolism, but with that comes too much activity sometimes. Okay? Mars is so opposite of Saturn. Mhm. Wounds, cuts, surgeries, common to these areas. Okay, inflammation, expulsion. Um, but this could also mean like invasions of any sort of bacterial, viral, parasitic things. With symptoms like fevers, rash, vomiting, diarrhea, blistering. Those are typical of Mars. Mars because it wants to get rid of, right? That's the representation of Mars. Um, there's something about here because it's about wounds or surgery or boils or any sort of scars, moles or freckles. It's not necessarily the body, but it is tied to because it's in Taurus, and this isn't exactly something that's important right now. Um, it is something to do with, and maybe if there's any wounding or sores or something like that, it's tied to that area where Taurus rules. And the throat. Okay, but here Mars in Taurus represents quinsy, sore throats, tonsillitis, strep throat, hyperthyroidism, laryngitis, pharyngitis, injuries to the ear, nose, throat, neck, venereal disease, not that, thrush, herpes of the mouth, acne due to toxins in the colon, wounds to neck and Taurus region. Okay. Um, there's something here about reflexing. And let me read that again. Okay. Okay. Got it. Uh-huh. Okay. So with the Mars here in Taurus, it has a lot to do with anything that's kind of also kind of like build up because of the slow metabolism that Taurus tends to have. Um, it shows it can be reflexed into Scorpio, which is if there's no detox done, then there's a buildup of things. Right. That explains the Saturn placement in the South Node, which is calcification buildup of things as well. So something that's most likely inherited from mom and dad. um, and because it's in can be also reflex to not only Scorpio but also to uh oh timing here to Leo. So this is just for the first 3 days. It's reflex and there's a moon here, transiting moon right here to 20 degrees Leo, which is actually in square reflex to your natal Mars. So there's something to do with vitality. Vitality might be affected, or if there's inflammation in the body, specifically in that area we talked about, the throat area, it affects your vitality to a certain degree. Not completely, possibly, but this is the moon. However, I'm still going to look it up. Okay. It's vital force that's distributed itself with concentrated power, warmth, and joy. There can be an excess buildup of heat within the system. They may disguise their pains and or refuse medical help. So anything that's affecting it, the vitality or vital force goes towards the back area, circulatory disorders, vision issues, backaches, dehydration, infertility. Um, it is also it's actually also square to your natal sun, Jupiter, anyways. So that means that whenever you do get inflammation, this is typical, your energy goes down. Okay. Um, there seems to be some sort of like excess of energy, and that's kind of also when there's too much work, basically. I guess when you can say you're having too much, way too much fun, inflammation can sort of start to occur. Um, so the key is to balance between like when you already probably notice. And as you get older, you realize, oh, right? But this can still happen. Doing the square to Mars shows me that there is that inflammatory possibility or potential for inflammation, especially when there's the energy is depleted when you're having way too much fun, or it's just too. I would say it's tied to Mars. Jupiter here is tied to Uranus, and with Mercury, they're also tied to Uranus. Is trying to showing me that when there's too much emphasis put on unconscious behaviors and also work people that you work with, it does happen naturally. You work well with people in the public. It's kind of you have these innovative, different ideas in within yourself that are kind of it's very grounded in many ways. But how you relate with others, especially mentally and emotionally, that's usually how you work with in terms of the public as well. Well, what happens is that this natural flow that I'm seeing here can be draining, especially to the vitality, to the life force within, and it affects your health. especially with moon right now. And this is just going to be probably for today, with the moon there. So if there's anything backache sort of stuff, then that's what it is. Again, this is for January 6th, 2026. Uh, there's also reflex of Mars to not quincunx at all. Not even quincunx is Uranus here. You know. But the other big one I'm seeing here is that we have the transiting north nodes to your sixth and your 12th house. Now, I know what that means in typical astrology, like natal astrology, but medical astrology, it's not that good. Hmm. The nodes are not the one. If there are planets still transiting your nodes, hmm. We go back into the south node to Saturn. Okay, here we go. Osteoporosis, weak teeth, malnutrition, mineral depletion, rickets, insufficient sexual development. Edgar Casey says Saturn rules the gonads. Okay. Bone disease, premature skin wrinkles, weak or blemished skin. It's not, your Saturn is not placed in any of the medical houses. So I don't think it's that big of a deal. Again, it's still new to medical strategy. Uh, I don't see anything about that when it comes to transits. Yeah, let's yeah, there's nothing transiting the or conjuncting the south node or the north node. Technically, we do have a Saturn square here, your nodes. Um, but it doesn't say if it's being a square aspect to it. It's not conjunct in astrology. For those who know the conjunction means that two bodies or 2 points in astrology in together like this, right there, sitting beside each other. Square just means it's either within 90 degrees, give or take. What's called an orb between 8 degrees. Oh, it's 6 to 8 degrees. It depends on what it is. Usually from my okay. I think the reflexes squares only work with when we're talking about reflexing, whether or not the reflexed sign has the planetary body in it. Okay. Since we do have the Saturn here, I would say if there's anything when it comes to this one, things are leaving. So with Saturn here exiting your sixth house, pretty much. Uranus exiting the eighth house. Um, there's not much that's going to be, you know, if there's anything that might happen with the moon transiting that the 12th house and the first house in the next few days, I would say those are just um, what is this? Especially if it's going to go into next few days, I would say into uh, conjunct with Pluto here. There's going to be a sort of a spreading of the vitality, like I said before. The moon is it represents how your energy is basically. How do I understand this? It's sensitivity. There you go. That's what I was looking for. Sensitivity to light, temperature, and fluidic changes. In this inner, so we adapt to change in our level of moisture. So if there's lack of moisture, then yeah. Um, so it covers the menses, stomach, mammary glands, meningitis of the brain, left eye for men, right eye for female, for men, women, females, and the lungs. Okay. But if it's going to be going to Pluto, it's going to be quite, um, I would say it brings out the feelings that you have about, because you have Pluto in retrograde, it's not a huge thing that comes out. It's kind of quiet. So, because it's retrograde, but that just means that you often experience those transformational stuff inside your body. And when I say transformation, I mean we're talking like toxins that need to be rid of. And and because it's in retrograde, even though it doesn't feel as big as or as obvious as other parts of your body would, like sensitivity to things, it's still there. And because it's retrograde, it's for life. Okay? Um, so things to do with your kidneys, abscesses, glandular imbalance, any sort of dizziness, uremia, headaches, reflex from Aries. Um, when's when Saturn goes into 7 degrees or 6 degrees Aries, which is not going to be anytime soon. Let me double check here. Okay, so around 6 degrees, around April 5 of this year. If there's any sensations that, any sort of headaches might come through, then that's kind of a given. But headaches as in that comes from, I would say, like slow metabolism. So burning of things, or which is a good thing in a way. So that might not necessarily give you headaches. Okay, so yeah, uh, it might not. So it might not give you headaches, but what I'm saying, give you headaches, is in like you might not experience headaches. That's a trick about astrology, right? That it's not really the planets causing this; they just represent the agreed upon collective. It's the way I see it is karmic. We, I don't necessarily say karmic, but also like the things we've agreed on in terms of what the energies we carry through, and the planets represents those energies that we have agreed to in ourselves as saying this represents this represents that. So yeah. And I think that's about it. That's what I'm seeing here. That's the general thing. Uh let's go into pardon me. Wondering if there's something else. I don't think there is anything else right now. I would go into the asteroids, but there's a lot to go through. It's literally like a lot of details. But right now, I would say you're doing fine. If you do go through any of that stuff that I mentioned earlier, um, then that's what it is. Usually, you know what happens when there's inflammation. That's because we are in resistance to inflammation. We are in resistance to that's what I'm doing. I've been going back to the cold, even though I was sick. But it's actually helping too, because that means I'm not resisting it through the heat. Um, I don't know, that just at least for me, that's how it works. But I would say the big one here that I saw was the toxin stuff. Let me go into Pluto again. Hmm. Or rather, let me go into Pluto. That again, I never actually talked about. So there are writers who have speculated that Pluto is pathologically tied to radiation, parasites, necrosis, cancer, cellular mutation, genetic problems, organ transplants, genetic conditions, drug detoxification programs, resistant bacteria, mysterious war-related poisonings, DNA, RNA, nucleic acid, retroviruses, enzymes, and severe poisoning from chemical or nuclear waste. I would say it's a genetic one. Also tied with obsessions, um, big stuff, like pandemic, for example. That's a big one. The transplants also is tied to this, besides genetics, transplants, limb regeneration. Okay. Uh, New methods for fighting bacterial or viral infections and plagues. Often it says here, the bodily regions correlate with the sign of the date of Pluto appear in perfect health well into old age. So even though might be a tendency to get like here and this, it's the Pluto is very it is about catharsis, but it's also about regeneration and also about um, transformation, transmutation on a physical level, yes, and energetic level as well. So that's what I see here. So, anyways, I think that's it. I hope that helps. Thank you. I did my best. See you guys later. Bye.